Well, welcome in. This is your Odds Checker betting preview for this week's American Express. I'm Rick Gehman. That right there, Geoff Fienberg. And Geoff, a little more reasonable time, maybe. We're back on the mainland for the American Express. This kicks off our little mini California swing with a full field.
Yeah, 3-course alternate rotation. There's so many variables when it comes to picking an outright winner in a golf tournament. You put these guys over 3 courses, 3 days, extend the cut. It just adds to the variables. So that's not something I'm totally in fan of, but it's nice. It's a course that has shown, bombers, plotters. There's all sorts of ways to choose your own adventure and find a victory here. So that's fun.
3-course rotation, 54-hole cut, amateurs out there as well, as if things weren't going to be crazy enough. Does that change your exposure? Does it change your approach at all, knowing that this is more volatile, Geoff? Do you make any adjustments in your betting card?
Listen, I'm debating exposure elements just because Jon Rahm is here.
Yeah.
But in general, my exposure is altered for almost a silly reason, Rick, in that the coverage for this tournament is just so inferior. So my exposure is probably going to be a little inferior. Remember Hadwin was on 59 Watch and they literally ran a handy cam out to him on one of the other courses. So, It's hard to track. It's hard to follow. It's on an NFL playoff weekend. Rahm's playing. There are a lot of check marks to lower exposure. On top of that, it's a great history for finding some real huge numbers. So just in terms of, for me, I haven't made a bet under 50 to 1. And the bets I'm kind of tempted to make are triple digits, which seems silly, but it's where we are.
Yeah, Adam Long was 500 to 1 or something outrageous when he won this event a couple of years ago, but you're not going to get a number anywhere close to that for the top of the board, especially Jon Rahm. Bet365 hanging the best number on Rahm at 6.5 to 1. You get him at 5 to 1, 6 to 1, 5.5 to 1, depending on where you're looking. With Patrick Cantlay, the only other golfer in single digits, 9 to 1 in most places. And then, Geoff, you get Scotty Scheffler at 20 to 1. That kind of rounds out your top of the board, big boards. You talked about adjusting maybe your exposure based on this man at the top. Is he that dangerous?
Okay, I personally believe he is. I've gotten a lot of pushback. The guy only won one time this last year. Why change any approach? The math says not to change anything. My eyeballs do kind of feel differently about what the year might be for Jon Rahm, Rick. That being said, there's probably a strategy I'm going to employ somewhere or deploy somewhere down the road. This event, with the propensity to award jobbers in victory lane, and I don't mean to throw shade at anybody, but even the higher end of the mid-tier in the odds have been very successful here. So this is probably not the event in many ways because Rahm's greatest strengths are probably neutralized here. I already got done speaking to one of our friends, Andy Lack. You and him will be chatting multiple times throughout the week. And I made the point, doesn't this in some way seem like value on Jon Rahm? He's plus 650, but his Masters odds is 8 to 1. And Andy shot back at me, yes, but at the Masters, we could literally say only 35 guys can win. This setup has kind of shown us 140-man field, 110 of these guys, in some ways, it's crazy enough, feel live to a certain extent.
It's chaotic. That's the only way I can kind of describe this event. There's action going on literally at the same time on 3 different courses, and some guys might get a good draw, some guys might get a bad draw, and there's just a bunch of stuff going on. So I tend to agree that as bullish as I am on Jon Rahm, as excited as I am for him to correct his win expectation for this year, this is probably not going to be the spot for me. I can roll through the next set of guys pretty quickly because you mentioned that you haven't found a bet shorter than 50 to 1. I will point out Matthew Wolff. He's 33 to 1 is the longest that you can get him. He's had himself a pretty darn good fall. If he's back, this kind of feels like a pretty interesting spot for him or anybody else kind of priced in the same area here, Geoff.
Yeah, there are decisions to be made in this area. Just because I haven't made a bet yet doesn't mean I'm not tempted by a handful of these guys and there's a decision to be made. I see what people are seeing with Wolf. I'm not totally there, but it is a course where it's a birdie party and this guy racks up birdies. If you're not paying attention on Thursday or Friday, you turn on your scoreboard and this guy could be lights above the top. That's a reality of the situation. I hope I'm not like just beholden to the guys I have been betting, but I can't quit Corey Connors, although the 22-1, which could force me to quit Corey Connors, Rick, although he's incredibly tempting and people could debate his ability to succeed in a birdie party. That doesn't concern me. Abraham Answer, also above 30, a guy I bet last week by any Pete Dye model, any Amex history. There's so many things that point to Answer. I'm one of these people not totally deterred by miscuts. They happen. It's golf. He struck the ball well. So Answer and Connors have my eye, as the Seamus Power. The guy, we've gone from 50 to 30 to 1, Rick, but this is a course that I could argue suits him better and what his strengths are than even last week. Add in some vibing with the putter. Man, it could all be happening. The Seamus Power stats, you read them reading previews last week, and I almost had to go confirm for myself, looking at past results, if these stats are true or if, my friends are making typos in their articles. Newsbreak, they're true.
They're true. He has really taken a huge leap in the ball striking categories, and he was always a pretty good putter, and now it's a super dangerous combination. He's 32-1. There's a pretty significant discrepancy if you're using the odds checker grid on Taylor Gooch. 20-1 at DraftKings, but 36-1, nearly twice the odds at FanDuel if you are able to shop that. A little bit lower, Cameron Tringale, who has yet to find that first career PGA Tour victory, kicks us off in the 50-1 range. He's there with Will Zalatoris. And then you get a couple of savvy vets in the 60s. Maybe it's Ricky Fowler. Maybe it's Justin Rose. Maybe Siwoo Kim goes back-to-back. What do you see here, Geoff?
Yeah, so lots of options here between that 50 in front of 100. I had a long list of names that I'm sort of still whittling down. I have made 2 moves, though, Rick. I think that Siwoo Kim number is disrespectful. I haven't made it yet, but 65, defending champion, he could get scorching. But for me, I stepped in front of Will Zalatoris at 55-1. A lot of love for Matthew Wolff. I get it, but I don't know. I feel like double the number, just as good of an opportunity, in my opinion here. Could sound really stupid come Sunday night, but I'm here for Willie at 50-1. And Biz Aidenhout, Rick, 60-1 on that grid at DraftKings. He's the type of guy that can just plot around here perfectly. He can make 4 birdies in a row, and we're not going to ruin our good work because he went OB and made double.
Right.
Very open fairways off a great driving week for him at the Sony last week. If that can continue, it can all set up for Biz Aidenhout this week, the South African.
Yeah, when he gets hot, it's a little bit scary. Zalatoris, literally, not even exaggerating, one of the best ball strikers on tour in the last 50 or whatever, or 100 rounds, however you want to look at it. He will need to rely on that flat stick a little bit this week to get around. Now, does the fact that you get kind of the 3 guaranteed rounds, Geoff, does that change anything for you? I mean, you get some of the cream a little bit rising closer to the top. If it was 4 guaranteed rounds, we'd say, oh, the cream will rise to the top. The best guys will get there. What do we do with 3 rounds?
Yeah, maybe that's something more for DFS, but from an outright perspective, Rick, I'm not betting on guys I'm hoping will be saved by the 3rd round existing for them.
Good point.
That's just not where my train of thought is. When you make outright bets, I'm literally betting on hoping that guy's ceiling shows up, because to win on tour, to battle a Cantley, a Rahm, or even a Sungjae, there's like 2 guys on planet Earth, 4 of them that could win without their A game. So any bet I'm making, I'm banking on the guy having his ceiling. I'm not banking on being saved by a 3rd round to propel me into contention to win an outright.
Absolutely fair. Luke List, high ceiling, low floor, 65-1 at DraftKings. He's 80-1 at a couple of other places. Jeff, Michael Thompson was an excellent ball striker last week, and we're seeing the return of Cam Champ. Cam Champ did not play the Tournament of Champions, tested positive for COVID. He's back in the field this week, and he's 100-1 to win the American Express.
Yeah, I mean, I love Luke List. Maybe I'll have to find ways to bet him in other ways and props, because like, we know how good he is, but do I want to bet on him having a spike putting week? You know, that's tough, especially when maybe the long and narrow things that can neutralize some of the field when Luke is competing against them. But I'm a Luke List truther, so that wouldn't shock me. But as we flirt with the 100-1s, Rick, there's a lot of names. Like, I could bet a lot of guys and not even have a ton of exposure. I'll just, I guess, reel a couple of them that have caught my eye. Gary Woodland sitting at 100-1. You know, maybe this could be an ideal spot for Gary. Bullish on what his season can bring. Would like to see this one get started. Chris Kirk, 100-1. We saw him last year in Hawaii start an incredible run of form for Kirk. I see no reason why, off a nice week last week, he can't sort of propel that run of form that we saw early in the season last year. I won me a ton on DraftKings, but Russell Knox, I don't know if I can get there for the outright, Rick. But as we go deeper, FanDuel has popped 160-1s on this grid. A guy like Tom Hoagie, if that approach play can continue at 160-1, I don't care about the miscut. Was on the Hoagie wagon last week. I'll be back on it this week. Even a guy, I've kind of been sold the goods on Hayden Buckley this week. You know, there are some veterans, your Jason Days, your Molinaris, that I can make attractive cases for, but it might be the unknown of a player like a Hayden Buckley that does it for me. And I'll credit our friend Andy Lack with doing a sell on me for me on that one. And you can't ignore Lucas Glover. He led the field with approaches last week. 130-1. Maybe not an outright. Maybe you want to do other things with that, but that's a player sneaking at triple digits with that approach play. I can't ignore it.
Yeah, I'm going to be living here. I mean, Adam Svensson's 150-1, Jeff. He played well last week, and the biggest endorsement for Svensson is the guys that he gets carrying his bag. Tim Tucker, who was on Bryson's bag, Ted Scott, who was on Bubba Watson's bag. These guys don't go to scrubs. They see something in him. Adam Svensson, a very talented golfer. Even you could make a case for, I mean, Adam Long is 160-1, is much better now than he was when he won this event a couple of years ago. The game's just in much better shape. Hudson Swafford's won this event for. He's 250-1 at DraftKings. I mean, they are just begging us to fire at these triple digits, and I think I will comply.
Yeah, it's hard not to. I could keep going. Harold Varner, 160-1 at FanDuel, a player I can never get right. I'm never on the right side. But this sort of like plotting paradise in some ways, you look at past winners, Varner would work perfectly in that mix, 160-1. I said it about Bezadenhout. Pat Kazire is another guy that he'll ruin 3 straight birdies by putting it OB. Doesn't really feel like that's in play as much here. So there's sorts of types of players that I like. And to piggyback off a comment I made near the top of the video, while I could take some of those elites and make comparative line value to bigger events, I think that's neutralized because of how live I think so many of these, for lack of a better term, like, I don't want to call them dead fish, but 85% of tournaments, like,
yeah, you're right.
We're just calling these guys dead fish. I don't mean to be rude. That's just the reality of what we do on Mondays, Rick. Does not feel that way this week. Rom's here, the numbers are bigger, and my willpower will not be strong enough.
Yeah, you basically take the volatility meter, you crank it up to 11, and then you see what happens after 4 days. Okay, Jeff, so we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but we can wrap on this. When you are getting into the longer shots and you're compiling a card, you actually mentioned it, living in that 50s and longer, I mean, it allows you to bet so many more guys. So if you just wanted to fire a bunch of shots out there, you could basically get away with it the way that you and I tend to build our golf cards.
Yeah, and not only that, listen, I'm not a course history like truther. And there's so many events where I would probably not even care, and I would still probably stay in my pocket of 20 to 40 to 1. The history here is just telling us, from the types of players that can win here, from the bombers to the guys that can just get it out there and attack with irons and get a hot putter, and the recent winners. You mentioned Adam Long, Landry's been here in a playoff. We've just seen it time and time again. It gives life to these guys. Obviously, do I want my 101 pick to have to be head-to-head with Cantlay or Rahm? No, I'll feel pretty not good about that. But history says this is not the week for me to panic that Jon Rahm is here. So I'm not going to, and I'm just firing at triple digits, Rick.
I love it. I love it. I hope in a week's time we can come back and say, can you believe that cashed at 200 to 1? Oh my God.
Wasn't on it, but happy for you guys that hit the monster.
Geoff Fienberg is available on Twitter at GFienberg17. You can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been your odds checker betting preview for this week's American Express. Good luck.